Clinton flew to Camp David to host the summit. His aim was peace in the Middle East and a viable Palestinian state, an end to half a century of war. It was a high ambition, even for Washington. En route to America, Barak was worried. He had gambled his political future on Arafat's proving a genuine partner in the peace process. The American ambassador to Israel was on Barak's plane.
Barak, when he was ready to have a talk with me, went back to his bedroom and called me in there. And I sat on the bed since there was nowhere else to sit.
והשתמשתי בדימוי של לוליין בטרפז, שבאים אחד מול השני, ושאני קופץ עם הטרפז, ואני הולך לעשות את הסלטה הזאת, ואני לא יודע אם השני יושיט הידיים או ייתן ליפול, ואין למטה רשת ביטחון. אני הייתי מודע לזה שמבחינה פוליטית, פנימית, אני לוקח סיכון גבוה מאוד.
Barak told Clinton his starting position. Jerusalem would never be shared. Arafat demanded half Jerusalem as his capital and Palestinian sovereignty over what he knew as the Haram, Barak's Temple Mount.
We pledged to each other we would answer no questions and offer no comments. So I have to set a good example. Thank you. Thank you.
The Americans had drafted an agreement to present to both sides, and now Clinton had 10 days to turn it into a deal. The Americans led the way, but one side had to be the first to follow them. From now on, the doors were closed to the press. The American draft went first to Barak and appeared to say the Israelis would have to share Jerusalem with the Palestinians.
כשברק שמע את זה, הוא קפץ כנשוך נחש. הדבר הזה לא היה מקובל עליו לחלוטין.
The Americans wrote in an amendment to take account of Israel's position and took the paper to Arafat's cabin.
So President Arafat asked me to open it and read what's written about Jerusalem. And he noticed that even in that part there were some handwriting.
And he said, how can I accept that? How can I accept that? This is an Israeli idea. How can I accept that?
He holds me and he said, the most important thing for me is Jerusalem, the Haram. He took the paper from my hand, threw it on the ground, started screaming, call President Clinton for me. I want to go see President Clinton. I said, Mr. President, I can't wake the United States President at 2:30 in the morning. I can't.
I'd gone to bed and I got a call from Gamal, and he said, Madam Secretary, you're not going to believe this, or maybe you will believe it because you know the Palestinians. They are in an uproar. They have to come and see you. And I said, you've got to be kidding. And he said, no. I said, what time is it? And he said, it's 2:30. Everybody's very apologetic.
I was so ashamed, you know, to go to a lady's compound at 5 to 3 in the morning. I did not feel good at it.
And I thought, well, this is what I get paid for. So I got up and I got dressed and I received them in the living room part of my cabin.
You know, but I explained to her that this paper we cannot accept. This was a mixture of hasty things, and this is not how peace is made. And she said, that's okay, that's your position. I'll tell the president.
For a week, every American effort was rejected by one side or the other. And Barak, who had asked for the summit meeting, now refused point blank to negotiate directly with Arafat. A frustrated President Clinton was no nearer his dream of making the peace, and he was due to leave for a G8 summit in Japan the next day. He confronted the Israeli Prime Minister.
I told him he had to make a better offer. He just had to. We had to move this thing off the dime, and that I was going to Okinawa, and we're going to shut the thing down. It would be a terrible thing to do. So then, when I finally put it on him, he said, well, I got to go talk to the team.
Barak called the whole dozen-strong Israeli team together.
אמרתי להם, אנחנו ניצבים בפני החלטה מהגורליות בתולדות המדינה. דומה אולי להחלטה של בן גוריון על קבלת תוכנית החלוקה, או להחלטה של מנחם בגין להחזיר את כל סיני בתמורה להסכם שלום עם מצרים. בלי החלטה כזאת אנחנו בדרך לאסון.
Speaker after speaker said he must make some sacrifice over Jerusalem to avoid an eruption of violence. But Barak was well aware that to do so could be political suicide. They argued all day.
We're sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting. The president getting more and more angry and agitated about this, feeling that we're being treated like nobodies.
They asked me to do this, and then they don't want to talk and they don't want me to bring them together. I mean, Arafat was only too happy to be brought together. But finally, you know, Barak emerged late at night.
Barak arrived at Clinton's cabin with his offer. A couple of Palestinian villages on the outskirts of Jerusalem could become their capital.
ואמרתי לו, ההחלטה שלנו צריכה להיות איך אנחנו מוצאים דרך לשלב בין השאיפה שלנו לירושלים גדולה, רחבה, חזקה ויהודית יותר מאי פעם, לבין ההכרח להכיר בעובדות של שכונות פלסטיניות צפופות גדולות במזרח העיר. שום ראש ממשלה ישראלי לא יוותר לעולם על הריבונות בהר הבית.
So the president explodes and says, you made me wait here for 13 hours and you come back with this? You go sell it to Arafat if you want to. Don't ask me to do it. I'm not going to do that.
ומסתכלים ככה עין בעין. קלינטון הוא אדום כזה. כי הנשיא האמריקאי הרגשתי שהוא בלחץ. אני הייתי שקט מאוד.
Well, I just told him, I said, you've got to go further. They've got to be able to see enough in your proposal to believe that if they give and you give and they give and you give, they'll get someplace they can live with. You've got to do better. You have got to do better.
Barak's opening gambit had failed. Was this the time for the arch strategist to put all his chips on the table?
אני הגעתי אל ברק בחשאי כביכול, על אופניים, רכוב על האופניים, אל הכניסה האחורית לבקתה שלו. מצאתי אותו יושב מאחור, מסביבו פזורים עיתונים פתוחים, עיתונים, בעיקר עיתונים מהארץ. הוא עצמו לא מגולח, מאוד מהורהר, מאוד מכונס בעצמו. אמר לי, שמע, גילי, אני חייב פה להחליט ויתור על הריבונות בעיר העתיקה, הריבונות הישראלית הבלעדית בעיר העתיקה, אבל לקבל כנגד זה את סיום הסכסוך.
That evening, Barak was back at Clinton's cabin.
אמרתי לו, אני מוכן שאתה תעלה בפני ערפאת הצעה של חלוקת הרובעים.
בעצם הסתרר שקט בחדר של קלינטון. לכולם היה ברור לגמרי שברק עשה, הוא גם אמר זאת, הוא עשה ויתור ענק מבחינתו, הוא שבר כאן טאבו.
Barak had offered the Palestinians East Jerusalem as the capital. He had agreed to divide Jerusalem, something that all Israelis said they'd never do. And he offered them the Muslim and the Christian quarters in the old city.
The idea that half the old city would be under Arafat's sovereignty was completely unthinkable. We had gone to Camp David thinking the most we could get from the Israelis was 2 outer-lying suburbs.
ונושיט את היד כל כך רחוק, שאם היא לא תענה, נדע שמדובר בטרוריסט מהותי, ולא רק בטקטיקת טרור לצורך השגת הסכם מרחיק לכת.